Hi everybody, it's Susanna from Cuba here today, and I am lucky enough to be joined by one of our chef extraordinaires, Alex. Now, I really love it when I get a chance to grab some time chatting to our chefs, as I'm always blown away by their culinary creativity. Plus, it always makes me a little bit hungry, so I'm quite glad that I've had lunch today. But we thought we'd tackle Italian for today's podcast. Now, this might not be your first thought when it comes to innovation, but it's a category that Alex thinks has got where there's an awful lot more space to play. So, without further ado, Alex, what is it about Italian that you think makes it so great?
I think it's a really accessible cuisine because everybody knows what Italian food is, but everyone knows it there's loads of different ways of pastas, but not everyone might know how versatile and how much more they've got to offer than just pasta or pizza. So they follow the seasons. They cook really simply, which makes their food great to just go to the supermarket, grab a few bits, and you cook something following the Italian ethos, and hey presto, you've got a meal. So in terms of innovating and creating, there's a lot more still to play around with Italian food. So that's basically why we want to talk about Italian food, isn't it? There's a lot of great...
It is. And I know I've been to Italy a few times. And I think one of the things that people really don't realise about Italian is they have an enormous amount of seafood in their repertoire that certainly doesn't come through in the kind of Italian categories that you can buy into, certainly in UK supermarkets.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to Italy, you go to the farm, you go to the markets there. There's always a massive section of fish. And the fish is always so fresh. The Italians cook fish really simply. They either just pan fry it or serve it with a little bit of lemon, or have it with some tomatoes, olives, capers. It's always really simple. I don't know why we don't like fish as much as everywhere else.
It's funny being an island nation, isn't it?
Yeah. We love fish and chips when it's deep fried, but actually like fresh fish we don't get on with so well.
Yeah, I do love fresh fish, but living in rural Oxfordshire, it's quite difficult to get really fresh fish. But we do have a fishmonger that comes round, and it's frozen, but it's been frozen on the boat, so I do get some fresh fish that way. But I like what you say about the simplicity of it. I think sometimes we overcomplicate things, and actually the Italian way of just a few really simple ingredients and letting those flavors really come alive is such a lovely way of cooking and eating.
Yeah, they're really good at it. They're really good at just picking 3 or 4 things that are at the peak flavor. If they're really good in season, or they've been preserved in a certain way that they just keep their flavor. And they're really good at just taking them 3 things and knocking them up at home really simply and putting them on a plate. For instance, they might take a piece of fish and then have it with a little bit of white wine, capers and olives, and have that with and that's your sauce done. So it's really light, it's really fresh and it's just really simple to cook because you're just poaching a piece of fish with other you get all your flavors from your capers and your olives, and everything is store covered and pretty inexpensive, and then you've gone and got them a nice piece of fish to go with it. Or even say tomato with basil salad. They're really good at just taking them few things and just putting them on a plate and eating them together.
Yeah, I think it is such a lovely way to eat. You mentioned basil. I've got just planted some purple basil seeds in my garden, so I'm looking forward to. Not sure if it's going to taste different to normal basil, but I'm looking forward to experimenting with that.
Yeah, you've got to be really careful because after you pick it, it will turn very quickly.
Oh, will it? Oh, okay. Well, it's only at the end of my garden, so hopefully I should be able to pick it when I want to use it.
Yeah, just make it into a pesto, and then it's preserved under oil then, and then you won't lose it.
You might have to come around and help me make some pesto. Yeah, sure, I'll give it a go.
When we have the pizza party with your wood-fired oven.
Absolutely. And you have just mentioned there, Alex, my favourite form of Italian. I'm sorry, I'm very classic. I do love a pizza, although As we've been discussing before we started recording the podcast, I do have a pizza oven in my back garden, which obviously makes me very, very lucky. My other kind of Italian faves, really, and it ties into what you say, it's simplicity, but it's also kind of using ingredients. I love to make, it's kind of I call it my Italian-inspired like tomato sauce. So not a ketchup, but like a tomato sauce, because it's super versatile. And you cook down a massive batch of it, and then pop it in the freezer, and I've got it then to use all over the year and it goes on pasta, it goes on pizza, you can put it through gnocchi, you can use it on fish, and it's a super simple recipe. Just chop up a mass of tomatoes with some red onion, bit of basil, a bit of garlic, and just slowly cook it down, and then strain it through a sieve to get the skins out, and you're done. So yeah, it's great for a bumper crop of tomatoes from the vegetable patch, definitely. And then I love real Italian cheeses. I used to, when work trips to Milan, I was well known for bringing back massive chunks of Parmesan in my suitcase because you could get hold of them so easily. But real Italian buffalo mozzarella is just, I could eat it all day. And the way that it pulls apart and it stretches and you get that beautiful creaminess in the middle of it. You don't want to slice it. You kind of want to rip it and dot it about with some tomatoes and some basil, little drizzle of olive oil, and then I love balsamic vinegar. So a little drizzle of balsamic vinegar, and you just, such a wonderful lunch, particularly for a lovely sunny day.
I love it that you touched on cheeses, because they literally have thousands of cheeses. The Alpine Italian cheeses are really different to the Swiss, but also quite close to an Edam. But
wow.
But they're very different flavors coming through there, and they're just, the way they eat their cheese, like you said, a lot of them won't. If they get good quality mozzarella, then you don't want to slice it, because the way they've stretched it and folded it, you lose them beautiful strands. They just tear it. And it's the same with the Parmesan. At the beginning of the meal, if they've got a good quality Parmesan, they'll just eat it in chunks, won't they? Like little chunks of Parmesan. And they don't cut the Parmesan up into cubes. They just stick a knife in and break it and let it break naturally. And that's because the way the salt formation in the Parmesan blocks, they don't want to ruin that. So you get that crunch from like a particularly aged Reggiano. You'll get a crunch of salt crystal, which is in the cheese. And if you start slicing it, you might slice through the salt crystal instead of letting the salt crystal break. So they're really particular about their cheeses as well. And it just goes to everything they touch in terms of food, they always treat it with the utmost respect. So although it's really simple, they've always got certain ways of doing things, and it's quite regional, and they will always do it the same way they've been taught. And it is very interesting to understand the differences between the regions and how they treat things differently to get the same tomato pasta, but slightly differently.
I did not know that about high quality Parmesan. I have to say, I always used to slice mine. But I'm not going to do that in the future. I'm not going to do it in the future, Alex. Do not worry. You obviously, you've touched on a number of ingredients, but you must have a couple of secret Italian ingredients that perhaps you've been playing around with in the kitchen that you might like to share with us.
So there's three that spring to mind straight away. The most usual one is probably artichokes, which is my favorite vegetable, which the Italians use. Look, I've actually got an artichoke tattoo. I love it that much. But they have like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can think of 3 or 4 straight away of different varieties of artichokes, and each one they treat differently. And then, of course, they've got the ones that they preserve under oil or in a brine, which are absolutely delicious. When artichokes are in season, each artichoke is only around for a short period of time, so you really have to use it before it gets woody. That's one that's a little bit accessible if you go to an Italian grocer at the right time of year. The other one is, we all know about balsamic vinegar, but white balsamic made with white grapes instead of red. Has got a lot sweeter flavour and not as caramelly. So it's really good for making dressings. And we actually developed it recently for one of our clients to go into retail, a well-known oil manufacturer. Or oil farm, I should say. So we made an Italian dressing with white balsamic, and it came out a really cool colour as well in the bottle. So really looking forward to that hitting the shelves. And then the third ingredient, which I think we should talk about, which is Italian, is they love their salads. They have so many different kinds of salads, like for starters, because if you think about the way the Italians eat, they have an antipasti, which are salads to start, and then they'll have another course which we don't have, which is your risotto or pasta course, and then after that they'll have their secondi course, which is their main course. So essentially, when the Italians eat traditionally, they will have a lot more food than us. So when they have the most amazing climate for growing all different kinds of salad leaves, like radicchio or and tomatoes, which go into salads. But they've also got one which is called puntarelli, which is a kind of chicory, like a bitter chicory, which almost look. I'm trying to think of how to describe how it looks. It's like a long tube, a long thin tube, all connected by a base, so like almost like pipes, and they're all connected at the base. And you slice the pipes on an angle, and you put them into ice cold water, and they curl up like a spring onion would. And then they dress that with anchovies and garlic and chili and oil, and it's just so crunchy and so bitter. But then you've got bitter salad, salty anchovies, a little bit of spice from chili if you want it, not traditional, but it's a good addition. And then a little bit of pungentness from the garlic. And if you try to eat this puntarelli raw, it's not the nicest thing. But when you put it with simple dressing of anchovy, garlic, and oil, it just changes it completely, and it's really interesting.
Oh, wow. Well, inspiration for innovation right there. I've never heard of puntarelli, but it sounds amazing. And I love a salad and love experimenting with salad and salad ingredients, particularly adding different textures to salads as well. So that certainly is one that I would like to keep an eye out for. I think you'll be pleased, Alex, if you ever make it to my garden to try out the pizza oven, that I have got 2 globe artichoke plants in my garden, because artichoke is one of my favorite foods. It just very closely follows asparagus, which is probably my top favorite food particularly in terms of seasonal ingredient. So yes, you'll be able to hopefully get an actual fresh artichoke off that at some point in time.
Nice.
But yeah, well, just Yama's say so much inspiration there, just amongst those 3 different ingredients. I consider myself pretty familiar with balsamic, but I don't think I've actually ever tried white balsamic. And I think having that kind of slightly sweeter profile, slightly less caramelized, how that could sit really nicely in quite a fresh dressing. So again, lovely idea there for a bit of product innovation, although it sounds like someone might have pipped someone to the post there with that idea. And yeah, can't wait potentially to see that in the supermarkets. So if we've inspired you today, we'd love to support you in working on how we can include some of these in a new recipe for you. So please do get in touch with the Cubo team. It's been so wonderful to chat to you today, Alex. Love chatting foodie ideas with you, and your passion for cooking in Italian has certainly come through today. And watch this space for our next podcast, probably coming up in a week or so, on another inspiring topic for you. Thanks, everybody.